What I like to do is to decide through insights where it can happen in a flash when you're not really focused on it so hard. Then you kind of get this, I like this phrase, where does the energy want to go? That really helps me. And another question that I'll ask myself is, what would make sense to do next if I can't see the full decision? So breaking it down into the next step so you can get closer. I like the analogy of rock climbing, or if you've ever gone rock climbing, you can't really see the handholds and footholds that are coming. You can typically just see the next one. So in entrepreneurship, you're often in a lot of situations you can't predict the future. So you do your best you can. You do the best you can to make the next step. So that can be helpful. There's no perfection of you have to have everything perfectly aligned. Do the best you can. We all have heads that go nuts sometimes. Now, I want to give you a short instruction, which is I'd like you to listen to me today and listen to each other as if you're listening to music. Okay? So how do you listen to music? Typically, you don't listen to music through your thinking. You let it in. You feel it. So as leaders, one of the former CEOs of two of the biggest brands in the food industry, one was Celestial Seasonings, the other was Ben & Jerry's ice cream. I was in a workshop with him one day and he said, the biggest breakthrough I had as a CEO was the day that I realized my job was to listen to the tone of the culture. So I'm going to say that again. My job was to listen to the tone of the culture. Okay? So we're going to explore today how this beautiful machine gets in the way of listening. Because most of you have been trained, like I was, to basically listen to your own thinking. And the problem is we tend to trust all of our own thinking, even the negative voice in the head. And that's the voice that gets us in trouble. Okay? So, okay, what I'd like you to do now is first of all, go ahead and write down a decision that you've been procrastinating. It could be, hopefully, a big decision that you'd like to workshop today. So we're going to work on this one decision for the next 90 minutes. And my hope is that you will move the needle on this decision and either decide or get closer. Okay? So that's the goal today. So think of something that you have been delaying, a decision that's important, and something you'd like more insight on. Okay? Any questions? Okay.
Does it have to be binary?
Doesn't have to be binary. Yeah. Something where you're stuck. Okay? Something where you'd like fresh ideas on your decision. Okay? Okay. Does anybody need more time? Raise your hand. Okay, everybody have a decision written down. We're going to come back to this, so make sure you've got it written down. Okay. So before we get into decision making, I want to teach you a little bit about how the ego works. Okay, we've all got an ego. It's a very useful tool. Problem is nobody teaches us how to tune it. Okay? So your ego is kind of this approximation of who you are. It's the collection of the thoughts, the memories, the beliefs, the culture you've been brought up in, the culture of your family, the culture of your city, the culture of your country. So it's the programming. Okay? And if that programming has been filled with a lot of junk, then that contaminates your thinking. Okay? So when it comes to making decisions, you're not just deciding on reality, you're also deciding on all the stuff you've collected. And that's like this. It's like having a car with a dirty windshield. So you're not actually seeing reality clearly if you're listening to the negative voice in your head. Okay? That negative voice in your head is the result of years of beliefs and programming that's been collected. Okay? So when you feel peaceful, like we did in the auditorium, that's an example of how you're actually feeling clear. That's how you're thinking clearly. It's the result of thinking clearly or clearing your mind. If you're feeling agitated, that's the result of contaminated thinking. That's the result of not seeing reality as it is. Okay? So there are three clues to let you know that you're in your ego. Number one is you don't feel safe. So insecurity. Okay. Second clue is you don't feel in control. Has anybody experienced that? Of course. Okay. And the third is that you don't feel connected, either to yourself or to other people. So one of our worst fears is to be kicked out of the tribe. That used to mean death. And so if you're isolated and lonely, it neither feels safe, in control, or connected. Okay? So all of us have these things, these fears going on in the background because of our programming. And it's all a lie. It's all an illusion. Unless you're actually being chased by a lion or you're in a dangerous, actually physically dangerous situation. The rest of these are triggered by contaminated psychology, the stuff you've collected, okay? Innocently. That's important to know. Okay, would one of you mind sticking this up on the wall, please? Can you tape this to the wall? Great, thank you. Okay, now there are 4 concerns that will give you a clue as to whether you're in your ego or not, okay? So the 4 concerns or distractions of the ego are: number 1, being right. Am I right? I want to be right. Okay, I want to be smart. Okay, and where do you think this comes from? Yep, it comes from the head, and it also comes from situations from our past where we might not have been listened to, or we might have been shamed. So we're afraid of being wrong, which then means, some virtual form of shaming, or it could be, literal shaming. Okay, so we tend to feel ashamed if we're not right, or we feel stupid or whatever, and that's one of the key contaminations that gets in there. And there's only 4 main ones. There are lots, but there are only 4 main ones you kind of need to worry about. Second one is, how do I look? Okay, so this could be, physically, how do I look? I mean, I wish I'd gotten a haircut before this conference, but but also psychologically, how am I looking? How am I coming across? And big one for entrepreneurs. Almost every founder I work with is trying to prove something, and it's usually to their mother or father, subconsciously. Okay, some form of good enough. Okay. And the third one, especially with business people, is money. Okay. So who here has ever been concerned about money? 100%. Okay. And the fourth one is about time. Okay. So what did we do in the other room? We actually bent time. I know that sounds weird. Okay. Now, how many of you feel under pressure for time right now with your business? Yeah. Okay. So what I want to show you is first of all, these are the clues that you're not thinking clearly. If any one of these are in your mind, you're not thinking clearly. Okay. So we're going to practice a little bit how to get out of that. Okay. Now, the word to decide means to cut. Okay. So if you decide one path or another, you cut off the other path, or at least it appears that way. You might be able to go back, you might not. Okay. So what happens if you cut something off? You might be wrong. Okay. That's scary. Now, when it comes to decisions in business, often it's about, how do I look? Okay. I'm in a board meeting and the board is hammering me for results. And I just got off a call on Friday with a a VP of a company, and the founder is freaking out because they're feeling pressure from the board. Has anybody been there? And the board is making up all of these pressures, not based on reality, just based on made up goals. And now that trickles down, and the founder is shaming her team because she feels all this pressure of how she's going to look if things don't work out well. Okay? So it's totally contaminating the possibility of creativity. And then, of course, the third one, money is involved in almost all of your decisions in business. There's a financial impact, of course. Who you hire, how fast you can deliver, the profit margins, et cetera. All these are decisions that we're making along this journey, okay? And all of these decisions will be contaminated depending on the level of consciousness you're bringing to them. So if you're coming from fear, you're actually going to make more fearful decisions that lead to fearful outcomes. And that trickles out with your relationships as well as the financial results, okay? So the way that decisions happen, we all think that it's logical. Oops, no, thank you. So it looks like we think about a decision, yep, and then we decide.
What was the connection with time?
Yeah, so with time, basically, that has to do often with pressure, or the sense of pressure. So often when we're thinking we don't have enough time, that actually burns up time. So, so you can sit there thinking you don't have time, or you can just relax and focus, and you create more time, and you actually have better ideas. I had a professor in university who every time I'd see him, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm so busy, so busy, so busy, so busy all the time, busy, busy, busy." And the thing is, it took him till he was like in his 60s to finish his PhD. How many of you have ever had like an experience of where time just kind of stood still and you lost yourself in your work, right? Like the passion of what you all do. Exactly. That's what I mean. Okay. So if you're not there, then you're thinking about yourself in some way. And one of these areas could be safety, control, or connection. Or you want to be right. How do I look? Am I going to make enough money? Do I have enough time? Okay. So these are just clues. So you can navigate where you are in terms of, are you connected with yourself? Are you intimate with yourself? Or are you caught in your head, in your negative voice? Okay. Now, what we think the way decisions make is this. We think, we decide, and we act. Okay. This isn't actually true. It's missing a few steps. Okay. I don't know why I keep saying, okay. So what actually happens is we have this power of thought, okay, which is like gravity. We can't help it. There's thought coming through us all the time. It's an invisible force like gravity. It just, thinking happens. It's weird, right? And now what that leads to is actually feelings. Now, if you were to remove the emotional center from your brain, you would not be able to make decisions. So all decisions actually happen from a feeling. So then those feelings lead to an action. Really a decision, sorry. Which leads to an action. And that leads to a result. And then you think about your result. So it's kind of the decision loop of what actually happens. Now, if your thinking is contaminated by the ego, your feelings you're going to notice are negative. So if you can learn to see that you're actually thinking, you're feeling the quality of your thinking, almost like a vertical If you had a vertical measurement system like a barometer, if you were having negative thinking or caught in your ego, you would kind of be below the line. You would be kind of down here, and your perspective would also shrink. And you'd feel it in your body and you'd feel it in your mind as tension. But if you were to zoom out, kind of go up on this barometer and feel really good, feel peaceful, loving, connected, creative, then from that level of perspective, you're kind of up on the balcony and you have a lot more options. Okay. Now what happens is when people are acting reactively from negative feelings, their decisions are constricted and everybody else around them will feel that. And then that ripples out in a negative way for a company. I watched it happen like wildfire, even in social impact companies where the values are good. The founder did not understand this, and so often created fear in the culture and then enabled fear of other leaders. And that trickled out and really constricted the possibility in the creative future of the business. And then you take action based on the decisions. So you're really acting based on feelings all the time. You're just not aware of it. You think you're thinking yourself through the world, but we're actually navigating through our feelings. And we think our feelings are telling us about the outside world, but they're not. They're telling us about the quality of our thinking in that moment. So if you understand this radical concept, which you can kind of prove to yourself in a lot of different ways, like if, all of you were in the same movie theater right now and watching one movie, you'd all have 100% personal experience of that movie, 100% different. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about is once you understand this dynamic, then you're going to start to see, wow, okay, if I don't feel good, that just means my psychology is coming into my experience right now and I'm not seeing clearly. Right? So now we're going to play with how to get out of that. Okay. So we're actually going to do the peace exercise again. Whoops. And so go ahead and close your eyes for a moment. Thank you. Okay. Go ahead and close your eyes for a moment. Take a couple deep breaths. Now see if you can get back to a peaceful memory. Go ahead and gently open your eyes. Now take one of your cards, preferably the one you didn't write the decision on, and go ahead and write down some of the qualities that you experienced, some of the feelings you had while you felt peaceful. It could be loving, connected. What was your personal experience of that peace experiment? Okay. If I could get a couple of people just to share what they experienced, go ahead and shout out a couple of the qualities that you experienced. Go ahead. Yeah.
Void.
A void. Okay.
Not emptiness, but void.
Void. Okay. Anybody else? Yep. Clarity. Okay. Just go ahead and shout them out. Just go for it. Yeah.
Connected.
Connected. Joy. Freedom. Peace. Clarity. Confidence. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Calmness.
Calmness. Beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to collect these cards at the end, and I have a surprise for you that I'll send you. Okay. So we'll come back to that. Now go ahead and close your eyes again. And I want you to think about your decision. Okay? I'm going to ask you a few questions about your decision. So how important does the decision feel to you, like on a scale of 1 to 10? Okay. Now, what's in the way of making the decision? Just kind of go with the first thing that pops to mind, okay? Now, how do you feel about the decision? What emotion comes up? What do you think will be better if you make the decision? What meaning or story does this decision have related to you and your identity? What might feel threatened? Now, if you're having a negative feeling right now, notice what percentage of your mental and emotional bandwidth is taken up by delaying this decision. And then as a percentage, how committed to not making the decision are you?
How committed to not making a decision?
Yeah. So if you're not making the decision, how committed to not making the decision are you? It's a trick question. You're 100% committed to not making the decision if you haven't made the decision. Okay. Now, go and close your eyes if you haven't. And how would you feel if you stopped putting energy into worrying about the decision? How would you feel if you stopped putting energy into worrying about the decision? Now, what do you really want when you think about this decision? What would be peaceful for you? Last question. Now think about what information are you missing, if any, that would help you feel safe about your decision. Okay. When you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Would anybody like to share real quick what they noticed? Anybody have any insights, realizations?
I mean, my main insight from the exercise is that I actually very much know what I want, and the answer is very clear. That's mainly just a lot of fear preventing me from taking action because I have no idea what will happen exactly, and a lot of fear. Yeah, but I know 100% what I want the result to be. It's very, very clear, and that's really what my goal is.
Great. So you already know what you want, but you realize there is fear in the way of deciding. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Okay.
So in my case, it's really familiar, but I noticed that I feel overwhelmed. But also on the other hand, I could really see that when, like in previous tasks, I could easily focus on, but during that task, my thoughts were easily going to another topics, just to avoid that one topic.
Yeah, so you found yourself avoiding that topic.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to say is actually you were avoiding the emotion of thinking about that topic because it seems like that topic makes you feel bad. So So one of the tricks is to be able to notice, oh, I feel bad about that topic. So that's the question of how can I feel peaceful, and go back to feeling peaceful and can help you decide. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I feel like that I'm maybe more okay with worrying about not making the decision and actually making it, and suffering from making the wrong decision.
Yeah. So worrying about not making a decision versus suffering from making the decision. Yeah. So the other trick here is to not decide is actually to decide. You've decided not to decide. It's a decision.
So maybe it's not an option.
Right. It's still a decision though. That's the trick. It's like, okay, well, we'll loosen this up, continue to loosen it up, but it's just a common trap is to think we're not in control and not deciding. But it's okay to wait sometimes. Sometimes that's wise. Okay.
I also realized that it's okay to make the decision, and then I can always go back in case I don't like the decision. Because I feel like I always project myself into the future, and I'm asking myself, how do I want to feel in 1 year from now? Instead of thinking what brings me joy right now, and make the decision based on that, and change in 1 year if I'm not happy with the decision.
That's great. So that's a really great strategy. So it's imagining how you would feel a year from now if you made the decision. Yeah. What I like to do is to decide through insights, where it can happen in a flash when you're not really focused on it so hard. Then you kind of get this, I like this phrase, where does the energy want to go? That really helps me. And another question that I'll ask myself is, what would make sense to do next if I can't see the full decision? So breaking it down into the next step so you can get closer. I like the analogy of rock climbing, or if you've ever gone rock climbing, you can't really see the handholds and footholds that are coming. You can typically just see the next one. So in entrepreneurship, you're often in a lot of situations you can't predict the future. So you do your best you can. You do the best you can to make the next step. So that can be helpful. There's no perfection of you have to have everything perfectly aligned. Do the best you can. We all have heads that go nuts sometimes. Does that help?
Yeah, it gives like I think the analogy gives a guideline, but I think everyone needs to find their own way, of course. But I like this decision making. When I procrastinate one decision, then I procrastinate the next one as well. The next one. So the question is if sometimes just taking action without being aligned is the first step into.
So what can happen is by taking action, it's a good way to move the decision and get some momentum going. And then you start to get closer to what the reality actually is. So sometimes that movement can actually free up what feels stuck. And then you're actually in the present. And now you're actually back into your creativity deciding. So athletics comes to mind for me, where if anybody's ever played football or soccer, if you have somebody go by you or get by you with the ball, the worst thing you can do is stand there and feel bad about it. The best thing you can do is go back and get on defense as fast as possible. It's kind of the same idea. So it's like deal with reality by action, and then you see what the variables are that open up through that action. But that momentum will reveal more, and you can always take a step back. So I like your question. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That exercise we're doing earlier, that I wonder whether that was something where we would be introducing thoughts and maybe even negative thoughts that would help actually bring us away from feeling in tune or being in a place where we are relaxed and actually having more stress, and bring us further away from what we're trying to actually achieve here.
Sure, that can happen.
And that's something that's definitely possible. And is there anything one can do against that?
Well, I think this makes a good point. In a way, you're actually replicating what happens in our own minds, is by having more input often that can distract us. Or if we have people that are giving us lots of advice and there's lots of input and we're not able to handle that at the moment, that can add to the overwhelm. So it's a great point, and not the intent of the exercise. The exercise is intended to kind of free up what might be stuck, but that can certainly happen because thought causes feeling. So if a negative thought gets triggered in your mind, that's a result of your personal psychology. It reminds you of something that you don't want to feel. And that's the cause of the negative feeling or the overwhelm, not the actual information. It's your interpretation of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the thing about the head, heart, and gut is super interesting because there's a different answer for each. But I think I'm a very you do what you've got to do kind of person. I don't really if my heart says no, I'm like, you're just weak. You're not thinking about it like an entrepreneur. You're not thinking about it as somebody who's just going to do what you have to do to get to where you want to be. So do you think that is okay, and you just find alignment with your heart later based on outcome?
It's a great question. So I want to point you back to the 4 questions of the ego. So which one does that sound like to you? Need to be right? How do I look?
I think it's a combination of time and who I look like for myself.
Yeah.
Because I see myself a certain way, and again, I just think making decisions with your heart is a weakness. That's how I see it when it comes to work. So because otherwise I would have made many bad or many impulsive decisions.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
Yeah. So I think there's, the definition of what that heart means can be confused. The way I look at it is more aligned with what you actually want without the self-judgment. So if you weren't judging yourself for needing to be a certain way, what would you do? What would feel good? And I'll tell you, that's the strongest, most powerful thing you could ever do. It's not weakness. Yeah. Okay. Do what you are.
Do you think the decision that you have to make that could be good for yourself would be bad for others?
Great question. Well, I think you have to, sort of consider the real world ramifications, right? And of course, there's so many variables that can be involved. So I think the question would be around boundaries. So if there's a decision you need to make that is protecting yourself or drawing a boundary around your capacity, then that can be really helpful, even if that will impact others. But I kind of like the idea of what blesses one, what blesses all. And, it'd be helpful to understand more of the nuance of your question. But generally speaking, when we take care of ourselves and we pursue our authentic selves, our unique talents and what we want, that tends to work out better. And in the short run, people might get pissed off at you. But that doesn't necessarily hurt. So, for the long run, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
One more question, if it's very urgent, and then
Okay.
I will suggest that you continue in the lunch space.
Okay, okay, thank you. I have one more request of all of you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciated being with all of you. Woo! Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.